Hello and welcome to the inventRight TV show. My name is Andrew Krause. I'm one of the co-founders here at inventRight. This is one of my favorite kinds of shows where you've invited one of our students, Kemaal, on, along with his coach Brad, to talk about the experience of licensing, working with the coach, going through the process, the ups and the downs. There's definitely going to be a lot for you guys to learn. It's going to be very transparent. So welcome, Kemaal.
Thanks, guys, for having me.
And welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, Brad, you're Kmaal's coach, and you were telling me before he came to us, he'd actually been working on trying to license for a while. I'm going to actually go ahead and address Kmal. Kmal, you've been working on trying to license for a while. Was it working? Was it not working before you came to us? What was working? What wasn't working? And what changed? And what did we tell you to do different?
Well, before I started taking the class, I thought it was working. And then when I started taking the class, I realized, it was clearly after I started implementing the things that the class teaches you, it became apparent that the amount of positive feedback that I was getting, or at least the amount of help that I was getting from people in the form of either email or phone calls to get me to the right person, was drastically different. So I think the major difference was it wasn't a problem of me finding the right person to talk to at the company. It was actually engaging with that person in a manner where they actually wanted to talk to me. Mm-hmm. In the beginning, I would just, when I hadn't taken a class, the message I would put out to prospective licensees is a lot of information that I thought was relevant to the product and that the person would want to actually read and absorb. And what I found out, after taking the class is, that's not always necessarily how people start becoming, receptive to an idea. And I think that by using the methodologies that you guys teach, and really simplifying the message to where you are conveying the core idea or the concept in a manner where the person's able to appreciate what you're trying to solve, or basically the idea.
And did this come out? You said class, but is this coming out in your one-on-one sessions with Brad, where Brad's like, you got to change this up a bit? Like, what was he doing with you? Or Brad, what were you telling him?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, with Kmal, I feel like he was going about it in a very good professional way. It was a classic example of less is more. And so instead of him sending a lot of information or a longer email, I was really having him condense it and just kind of get more to, are they looking for outside innovation? If so, are they the right person? And so, yeah, the whole less is more aspect, I think, really kind of helped in a sense. So, like I said, he was doing things right, but it was just minor tweaks to his email communication and maybe through LinkedIn, just to really get it more easily digestible.
Kmal, were you surprised, because you've been doing this for a fairly long time before you came to us, with not that major of a tweak? I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with not that big a changes, made a big change in how responsive companies were. It was what Brad was saying, did it? Because you were saying like crickets. You send an email and you never hear back from them. Has that improved?
Yeah, I mean, that's drastically improved, but I think that it's underappreciated that the small tweaks are actually just they make a major difference in what the other person's perception of what you're putting across to them, right? And so I think that it is actually, even though you term it a minor tweak, it's actually a major change it's a shift in how you're approaching somebody. And even though I thought that I was approaching somebody with like, hey, I'm going to blast this person with everything that I got, and I'm going to let them know everything about this product right off the bat. And I thought that that's the approach, is that people want to know everything about this, right? And that's for them to then evaluate. What I didn't appreciate about the process was, hey, somebody's got to first of all understand if what you're trying to design is actually going to solve a problem that they're having a problem with. And if that resonates with a person, then you're going to be able to take the next step. And that's where I was losing everybody, is that I think that packing too much information, the person was just probably overwhelmed. And, the email probably was like, okay, I'll get to that when I get to it.
And then they don't get
rather
to
than,
it.
hey, I see a short, succinct email. I can pick out exactly what this person wants. If I'm not the right person, literally, I tell Brad this, is that if I had sent an email blast out 5 years ago to 10 people, I may get one response. Nowadays, if I send out an email in a similar manner, not necessarily using LinkedIn, but using direct mail, if I send 10 emails out, I'll probably get 4 responses. 2 of them will be of people saying, hey, I'm not really the right person to talk to. And then probably the other 2 are like either the person or pointing me to the person that needs to triage that kind of an issue or that, that kind of an idea. And more often than not, where, before I wasn't getting past the first person to even know if they're the decision maker. Now at least I'm getting to the decision maker and I can actually have a tangible conversation. And more often than not, when we do have that open email, back and forth after they've understood what the idea is, there is some sort of closure to the whole thing where they'll either say, hey, we're interested, or hey, we'll pass on it. But that's part of one of the things that was just driving me crazy, was just not knowing what the other person thinks of it.
Yeah.
Now at least I get to the point where I have closure on everything.
Brad, how did you help him make that change? Was it a little bit every week? Was it a little change here or there? How did you help him make that transition? Because Kemaal, you've been doing it for years before you came on board with us, right? And I liked your honesty. You'd mentioned, like, I'm doing it right. And then if people told me I wasn't, I still felt like I was doing it right. Is that the case?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I'd been doing it for 5 years. I'd been doing it for 5 years prior, and I really thought I had the right approach. I was like, I'm putting relevant information here. I'm not coming across as being, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, but it's like presenting it in a manner where I'm not being abrasive with it or arrogant or anything. And Brad read my messages. He said the messages are fine. It's just that it's probably just too much for somebody to absorb. And, when we took it down to such few words, I was like, there's no way this is going to work. I was like, there's no way.
I like your honesty.
This person is just going to say, who is this guy? Like, but shockingly, I'm like, after the first blast, I'm like, wait, I just sent emails to 10 companies and I got hold of every single person at each one of those companies.
Brad, is this common? I mean, do a lot of students want to throw everything in the kitchen sink in there, and you get them to boil it down, and then you see a difference? Do you see that pretty often, or?
Yes, not just with communicating to potential companies, but also on their marketing material. So sales sheets, they'll want 8 different bullet points highlighting the different features of their products, and I try to cut it down to 3 different bullet points. Give me the top 3, because someone who's looking at it, they'll give you maybe 7 seconds.
Yeah, and that's another thing. That's another thing that was also extremely helpful, was getting the sell sheets to where, hey, we had sell sheets prior to taking the class and learning a little bit more about this approach. I mean, which is it. If you don't have to reinvent the wheel, why reinvent the wheel? So.
What were you doing with your sell sheet, Kemaal? We talked about the outreach. Were you throwing too much in there as well?
No, we weren't throwing too much. It was just taking, focusing on how you focus on those sell sheets. Is taking the product and actually putting things that will resonate with the vertical or the person that you're actually trying to engage with. And I just think that with having the advice there, and when you're creating those sell sheets, to actually just bounce it off somebody that says, hey, maybe change this or that. I know that they're minor tweaks, but I think they end up being a major impact on the other side. It's a major, major impact.
Brad, I think this is interesting. I mean, you're saying that he wasn't doing anything dramatically wrong. He wasn't, in his words, he wasn't being super abrasive. He wasn't sending crazy inventor emails, but it wasn't working for years and years. And then you didn't guide him to make changes that big, but it made a big difference. And I think that's something that Steve and I are talking about a lot these days, is the subtle nuances and the ups and downs. And, oh, well, for your particular product, go over here or go over there, seems to make a really big difference. And our students are quite often shocked by the small little changes. It's the devil's in the details, as they say.
Yes. Yes. I was even really surprised at how quickly his response rates went up. I mean, it was pretty drastic. So I was excited for him.
That's cool.
And something else I want to mention too is that, you know, Kemaal was pitching in one particular category, and then we started talking about another category too. And that's I mean, Kemaal, if you want to share a little bit about that, I think that's a pretty interesting story, because he's getting traction in that secondary category right now.
Which one are we talking about? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, because, you know, you're in the packaging, you know, industry. Obviously, we're not going to talk specifics about your product, but now we're going more the novelty.
Yeah. It just so happened that one of the ideas, a quote unquote side effect of the actual idea, is a very visually entertaining, effect, right? And so, where the base product was designed for like privacy protection, it's now like a novelty product because it creates this visual effect, right? And so we managed to find kind of a diamond in the rough just by constantly going back to the idea and thinking of who else might be interested, because we were just having the biggest adoption problems in packaging and in labeling, because I think that just typically that industry works at a slower pace, and disruption to their systems is just, hey, you disrupt the system, you break everything, you know. So nobody wants to break the system, and I think that, you know, novelty, the amount of creativity that you can get from that, it's like they're braver to take on.
So what are you guys, Brad? What are you guys doing now? So you got a version of it in packaging and a version of it for novelty. 2 different lists of companies, 2 different products essentially, and that's not that uncommon. We help our students find those opportunities sometimes. Is that the case? What's going on here?
That is what's happening. And so what we're doing right now is, I mean, he's still working both categories, but with the interest from the novelty category, we're going to kind of use that and say, hey, we got interest over here in this other vertical, and that's going to help generate, you know, just using pull-through marketing for packaging.
Cool. But those little subtle nuances, it's hard to get that from watching a video or reading a book. And, you know, I find it interesting. Kemaal he wasn't acting like crazy inventor, but it wasn't working and making those tweaks. And I'm so happy that you're there to help him and guide him week by week. It's not like you do one call. It's like, oh, okay, I'm good now. I'm sure that you keep making these tweaks with him. Is that how it's working for you, Kemaal? You just keep tweaking on things? And
well, so now the conversations that I'm having have gone are basically further than they've ever been. And so that's when, hey, it's the first time I'm going down this road with a lot of these licensees. So I need a litmus, to say, hey, you're doing this right, or maybe you should be doing, X, Y, Z, or and even when it comes to negotiations and stuff, determining, you guys have the in-house expertise for that where, hey, if I needed to determine the market capitalization of, some vertical that we're looking at, it's somebody that's done it, day in, day out, and can just say, hey, this is what you should be asking for. It wouldn't be unreasonable for you to ask for this.
Right, right. And that gets even more into the weeds with things. And those little differences make even more of a difference when you're in negotiations, right, Brad?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Cool, guys. I think this is very helpful for anybody watching. I think it's hugely helpful, and showing these ups and downs, mindset stuff. I love it. Kemaal, thank you so much for coming on. Brad, thank you for coming on. I think our audience will appreciate this. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Take care. Keep inventing, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.